The cold wind howled through the steel alleys of Colony 6, a mining city floating on the edge of a frozen moon. Gray towers stretched high into the clouds, their lights flickering in the falling snow. People moved quickly, heads down, their breath misting in the air. Nobody looked at the girl. She sat on the ground near a garbage chute, hugging her knees. Her skin was pale purple, her white hair tangled and wet. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her hands were red from the cold. She didn't cry anymore. She was too tired for tears. Her name was Sheena, but no one had asked. A group of teenagers passed by. One of them laughed and threw an empty food wrapper at her. Another kicked snow in her face. Filthy alien, one muttered. Xina didn't move. She had learned it was better to stay silent. Better to be invisible. A man stood at the edge of the street, watching. His name was Jackson Hayes, human, ex-soldier, now just a delivery pilot working for cheap wages. He had seen war. He had seen cruelty, but this was different. This was quiet. Cruelty, the kind that wears a uniform and keeps walking. Jackson stepped closer. People noticed. A woman shook her head. A man muttered, "Don't waste your time." But Jackson didn't stop. He walked through the falling snow, knelt down, and looked at the girl. "Hey," he said gently. "Are you okay?" Sheena flinched. Her eyes, big and glowing faintly in the shadows, stared at him. She didn't answer. Jackson looked at her hands. Frostbite. She wouldn't last the night. He took a deep breath, stood up, and pulled off his coat. It was old but warm, heavy military fabric. The only one he owned. Without a word, he wrapped it around her shoulders. Gasps echoed from the nearby crowd. One man laughed nervously. He just gave his coat to that thing. Jackson turned and stared at them. Just stared. The laughter stopped. He turned back to the girl. "My name's Jackson," he said. "You don't have to speak. But you don't deserve this." Still no reply. But she held the coat tight around her. Her fingers trembled. He offered his hand. For a second, she didn't move. Then slowly, like she didn't believe it was real, she reached out. Her fingers touched his, and something shifted. Inside Jackson's small cargo ship, the heater buzzed softly. It was cramped and dusty, filled with boxes of spare parts and half-eaten rations, but it was warm. Xina sat on the edge of a bench, still wearing his coat. She hadn't taken it off since he gave it to her. She looked around the room with wide eyes. Jackson made hot soup. He didn't ask questions. He didn't force her to talk, but in his mind, questions raced. Who was she? Why was she alone in the street? And why did the sight of her scars, thin glowing lines across her neck and arms, make his stomach twist? She finally spoke, just 2 words, "Thank you." Her voice was soft, broken, like someone who hadn't spoken in days. Jackson smiled. "You're welcome." He handed her the soup. As she drank slowly, he watched her, not like a soldier watching a threat, like a man watching something fragile and forgotten. He had seen death. He had seen aliens and humans kill each other over nothing. But this girl, this one small girl, had been hurt by silence, by the kind of evil that wears a smile and walks away. He wouldn't walk away. That night, as snow buried the streets outside, Sheena slept in the corner of the ship. Still wrapped in his coat, Jackson didn't sleep. He sat in the pilot's chair, thinking. He knew what the people in Colony 6 would say. Helping an alien? Risky. Giving her shelter? Stupid, but he didn't care, because when he looked at that coat, on her small frame, something inside him told him, this wasn't just kindness. It was the beginning of something much bigger. He just didn't know what yet. But soon, the entire colony, and maybe the whole system would. Jackson woke to the sound of soft humming. It wasn't coming from the engine or the heater. It was a strange, musical sound, almost like a whisper mixed with a song. It was coming from the far end of the ship, Where the girl had slept. He stood slowly and walked toward her. Xina sat cross-legged on the floor, the coat still wrapped tightly around her. Her eyes were closed. Her hands hovered above the floor, fingers switching like she was playing an invisible instrument. A faint glow moved along her fingertips, blue and soft, like static. When Jackson stepped too close, her eyes snapped open. The glow vanished. She looked scared. "I didn't mean to scare you," he said, "making sure you're okay." She looked down. "I'm not," she whispered. Jackson sat down a few feet away. "What happened to you?" Silence. Then quietly she answered, "They called me Subject 12. That name hit Jackson like ice. He had heard things, rumors from old war briefings, soldiers whispering about alien kids taken by secret labs. Projects hidden behind big words like hybridization and defense evolution. He didn't speak. He let her talk. They kept me in a cold place. I don't know where. Machines watched me. Wires were everywhere. They tested my voice, my blood, my everything. I escaped through a vent." Jackson frowned. "How long were you out there?" "I don't know time," she said simply. "But I followed the lights. Ended up on the streets. I thought someone would help me." She looked up. "They all hated me." Jackson's jaw clenched. He had seen a lot of pain, but this wasn't a war wound. It was something deeper. "What's your real name?" he asked. She looked at him for a moment, then said quietly, "Sheena. That's what I remember from before." Jackson nodded. "Okay, Sheena, you're safe now." But he knew that wasn't true. Later that day, Jackson went out to find food. When he returned, he noticed something strange. The lights in the cockpit were blinking differently. The control panel, usually dead when parked, was active. One screen showed a symbol, a swirling pattern he'd never seen before. Xina was standing nearby, staring at it. "Did you do that?" She looked confused. "I didn't touch anything." Jackson stepped closer. "You sure?" She hesitated. "Sometimes when I think too hard, machines listen." Jackson stared at her. "Like, they obey you?" She nodded slowly. "Not all the time. Only broken ones. They understand me better." He didn't know what to say. That night, Jackson called an old contact, Drex, a tech smuggler and info broker. They met in a quiet alley behind the repair yard. "I need a favor," Jackson said. "I found a girl. She's not normal." Drex raised an eyebrow. "Illegal?" Jackson shook his head. "Worse, she escaped from somewhere. I think she was modified." Drex paused, then asked one thing. "Does she glow?" Jackson didn't answer. Drex's face turned serious. "You need to leave this colony now." "Why?" "Because if she's who I think she is, they'll be looking for her. And if they find her with you, you'll disappear too." Back on the ship, Jackson watched Sheena sleep. She had curled up on the bench again, the coat still wrapped around her like armor. He thought about Drex's words. She wasn't just some lost alien girl. She was made. Or remade. And someone out there wanted her back. Badly. As he looked at her small frame and tired face, he made a silent promise. They won't take her. Not again. Not while she wore his coat. Asterisk. The ship floated quietly in low orbit above Colony 6. Outside, space looked peaceful. Inside, it was anything but. Jackson couldn't sleep. He sat in the pilot's chair, watching the dark screen in front of him. His fingers tapped nervously on the armrest. Below them, the colony buzzed with life. But here, it was too quiet. Behind him, Sheena was talking in her sleep again. At first, Jackson thought it was just soft mumbling. But then he heard the words. "Don't inject that again. Please, not the light. I can't breathe. Stop, please." Jackson turned quickly. Sheena twisted on the bench, caught in a nightmare. Her face was tight with fear. Her hands clutched the coat, knuckles white. He stepped closer. "Sheena, wake up." She didn't respond. Then her eyes opened, but they were glowing. Bright blue. And her voice changed. It wasn't hers anymore. Subject 12 is responding to sequence echo. The voice said, cold and robotic. Preparing neural override. Maintain containment. Jackson stepped back, heart pounding. Sheena? She blinked. The glow faded. She looked around, confused and frightened. I was dreaming. Jackson knelt beside her. You said something. A sequence. You called yourself Subject 12 again. Tears formed in her eyes. They put voices in me. Commands. Triggers. I don't know which ones are mine anymore. Jackson swallowed hard. This was bigger than he thought. The next morning, Jackson opened one of his old data pads. He had saved war reports, black market, files, and restricted news. He searched for Project 12. It didn't exist officially, but he found pieces. A research division, hidden off-grid, funded by human alien tech firms. The goal, create a new kind of being. One that could survive in any system. Half machine, half organic, mentally enhanced. Emotionally erased. It was called Project Rebirth, and one log entry caught his eye. Subject 12 showed abnormal empathy during simulation. Refused to harm targets. Voice imprint unstable. Rejected further conditioning. Transferred to disposal wing. Disposal. They were going to erase her, but she escaped. Jackson felt sick. He looked over at Sheena, who was now sitting quietly, trying to fix a broken link. Her fingers moved fast, almost like she wasn't even thinking. He walked over. How did you escape? She didn't look at him. I climbed into the waste pipe, she said. They thought I was broken. I wasn't. Supposed to wake up again. Her voice shook. There were others. More like me, but I don't think they made it. Jackson sat beside her. You're not broken, you're strong. She looked at him with tired eyes. I'm dangerous. That night, the ship's scanner beeped. Jackson checked the screen. A long-range ship had entered orbit. No ID tag. No landing. Signal, military design. Black hull. Silent engine. Jackson's eyes narrowed. He checked the local channels. No one else seemed to notice it. Except one thing. The ship was scanning only his vessel. He shut down the comms. Dimmed the lights. Then turned to Sheena. We have to move, now. Is it them? She asked. I don't know, Jackson said. But they came straight for us, and they're not here to talk. As the engines fired and the ship pulled away from Colony 6, Sheena stood near the window, staring at the black starship in the distance. Her voice was quiet. They're not just after me, she said. Jackson looked at her. She continued. If they find me, they'll take everything I've touched, everyone I've met. That's how they erase mistakes. Jackson clenched his fists. They'll have to go through me first. Sheena looked at him. For the first time she gave a small, tired smile. Then, I guess I'm not alone anymore. Asterisk, the stars outside the ship were quiet. But Jackson felt it in his bones. They were being hunted. His ship wasn't built for stealth. It was an old cargo hauler, patched, noisy, and slow. But for now, it was flying low through asteroid fields, dodging sensors, slipping through gaps between moons. Xin sat beside him, watching the scanners. She hadn't spoken much since they left Colony 6. Her body was still healing. But her mind, Jackson could tell, was always listening. Always alert. That black ship hadn't followed them yet. But it would, and when it did, it wouldn't ask questions. Later, while parked inside a hidden repair bay deep in a mining colony called Rust Point, Jackson met with Drex again, his contact from before. Drex looked shaken. They activated a retrieval team, he said in a whisper. I've only heard about them once before. Genetically enhanced. No names, just numbers. Jackson frowned. What kind of team? Drex swallowed. They're called whisper units. They don't chase. They track. They don't leave witnesses. Jackson's grip tightened. And now they're on your trail. Back at the ship, Sheena was silent for hours. Then she said, "I feel them." Jackson turned. "What?" "They talk without speaking," she said. "I feel their minds trying to find me. Like cold fingers searching in the dark." Jackson didn't know what scared him more, that she could feel them, or that they were already this close. That night it started. A power surge hit the ship. Lights blinked. Doors clicked. The ventilation system shut off. Jackson grabbed his pulse pistol and ran toward the engine room. And there, in the shadows, he saw something move. Thin, fast, inhuman. He fired. 2. Slow. The figure disappeared like smoke. Xina screamed. From the cockpit. "They're inside." Jackson ran. He found her hiding behind a crate. One of the whisper units had cut through the wall. No alarms, no sound. Just melted metal and smoke. The creature was tall, human-shaped but wrong. No face. Just smooth black skin and red eyes like burning coal. No voice. Only breathing. Turned toward them. Jackson didn't hesitate. He pulled the emergency lever. Whoosh. The side door slammed open, and vacuum tore through the ship. The whisper unit flew out into space. Alarms blared. Jackson sealed the door again. He turned, breathing hard. Xina was shaking. Her nose was bleeding. "They didn't find us," she whispered. "They found me." After the breach, they moved again. This time, Jackson didn't ask where to go. Xina told him. "There's a moon," she said. "A dead one. Nobody goes there, I remember. They used to test things there. I can hide." Jackson nodded. "Then we go." He looked at her not as a child anymore, but as something powerful, something hunted, and maybe something that wasn't done changing. Hours later, they landed on a cracked gray moon. No air, no cities. Just caves and silence. They parked inside a hollow crater for the first time. Jackson and Sheena stepped out together in the dark. She looked up at the stars. "They will come again," she said. Jackson nodded. "Then we'll be ready." But neither of them knew they had already landed. The dead moon was cold and silent. Inside the small crater base, Jackson checked the ship's systems while Sheena slept. The whisper unit attack had damaged more than just the hull. Their comms were fried. Weapons were low. And they had no backup. They were alone. Jackson leaned back in the chair and stared at the coat hanging near the door. His old military coat, the same one he had given Sheena. In the alley, something had always bothered him about it. Not the warmth, not the fabric. Something inside. Jackson took a small blade and cut open the lining. A tiny chip fell out. No blinking light, no alarm. Just a silent, black tracker the size of a fingernail. His heart dropped. He had carried this coat for years. Since the war. Since he left the Earth Defense Program. No one had told him it was bugged, and now he realized something worse. They hadn't tracked Xina. They had tracked him. The silence in the room grew heavy. Xina stood in the corner, watching him. Her voice was soft. "That's how they found me." Jackson turned slowly. "I didn't know," he said. But even to his own ears, it sounded weak. Xina didn't move. "They made you carry it, didn't they? Even after you left them." He sat down stunned. "I never checked it. Never even thought about it. It was just my coat. My past." She looked at him. "Your past found me." Jackson slammed his fist into the wall. "This wasn't supposed to happen. I was done with them. I just wanted a quiet life." Sheena didn't speak. She sat down across from him and stared at the floor. "You were kind," she said. "But now I wonder if they planned that too." "No," Jackson said quickly. "That part was real. You have to believe that." She looked up. Her eyes glowed faintly blue. "I want to," she whispered. Hours passed. Jackson couldn't sleep. The guilt wrapped around him tighter than the coat ever had. He went back to the cockpit and opened the encrypted logs from his time in the defense program. Files long buried. He found a name, Project Whisper, and within it, a list of authorized agents. His own name was there. Jackson. Hayes, Contact Unit Delta. He wasn't just a soldier. He had been the backup plan that if Subject 12 escaped, his mission, buried deep in code, was to interact naturally, observe behavior, and if needed, report last known coordinates. He was never meant to protect her. He was meant to lead them to her. He stood in front of Sheena again, eyes full of shame. "I didn't know," he said, "but it doesn't change what I've done." She was quiet, then said, "You could leave, run. They'd let you live." He looked her straight in the eyes. "No," he said. "I'm not running, not anymore." She studied him, then nodded. "Then we have to destroy the last thing they own." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "What?" She walked over to the coat and picked it up. Her small hands tore it apart thread by thread. The last piece of his past burned in the crater's fire pit. "No more tracking," she said. "No more doubt." Jackson watched the flames rise. He didn't say a word, but in that moment, he knew this wasn't just about protecting Sheena anymore. It was about making things right. And the people who built her? They had no idea what she was becoming. They didn't have much. An old cargo ship, 2 pulse pistols, a dented scanner, and a half-healed girl with something inside her that even she didn't fully understand. But Jackson wasn't planning to run anymore, not after what he'd learned. He pulled the ship out of the crater and flew toward a place called Iron Ridge, an abandoned military testing zone on the far side of the moon. No comms, no power grid, no cities, just dry metal bunkers, broken towers, and sharp cliffs shaped by years of war. It was perfect. A trap. Or a grave. Xina sat quietly during the flight. Her hands clutched her knees. Her hair fell over her eyes. She had barely spoken since they burned the coat. "Are you scared?" Jackson asked. She nodded slowly. "Yes." He gave a small smile. "Good, so am I." Then he added, "But scared people survive when brave ones do stupid things." That made her smile too. Just a little. When they landed, Jackson went to work. He set up motion sensors around the ridge, rigged scrap parts into mines, laid traps along the only path in. It wasn't much, but he had learned in the war that you don't need to win the fight. You just need to survive it. Xina helped where she could. But every hour, her hands started to shake. Her breathing got shallow. Her glow would flicker in and out. Jackson noticed. "You okay?" "I think something's changing inside me," she whispered. Night fell. The moon sky was quiet, too quiet, until the stars blinked and one of them started growing larger. It was them, the Whisper unit ship, black, silent, falling straight toward Iron Ridge. Jackson stood at the edge of a broken platform and watched it descend. Beside him, Sheena stood tall, her thin frame wrapped in a rough blanket. No coat, just her. The ship landed with no noise. Just dust and shadow. 3 shapes stepped out, not soldiers, not people. They moved like ghosts, tall, fast, and wrong. Their skin shimmered like liquid armor. Their eyes glowed red. No weapons in their hands. They were the weapons. Jackson raised his pistol. Then Sheena stepped forward and whispered, "Let me go first." Before he could stop her, she walked into the open field. The Whisper units paused. Then one of them spoke, its voice metallic and strange. "Subject 12, initiating recall. Return for reprogramming." Sheena looked up, her voice clear and steady. "I am not your subject." The 3 units moved in perfect sync, stepping closer. Surrounding her, Jackson aimed, but then it happened. Sheena closed her eyes. Her skin glowed bright. Her voice changed, not into fear, but into power. She raised one hand, and the entire ground shook. The traps Jackson placed detonated all at once. Boom. Boom. Dust filled the air. Metal flew. Sparks lit up the ridge. Jackson ran through the smoke, coughing, calling her name. "Sheena!" He saw shapes moving, 2 whisper units damaged, limping. One crawling with a broken leg. The third gone, crushed under a fallen tower. And in the middle, Sheena stood tall, glowing like a small sun. Her arms were raised. Her eyes burned blue. And every broken machine within 100 meters was floating in the air. Jackson froze. He had seen tech. He had seen aliens with powers, but nothing like this. Sheena wasn't just a test subject anymore. She was something more. She lowered her arms, and the floating metal dropped like rain. She fell to her knees, shaking. Jackson ran and caught her before she hit the ground. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I just need rest." He looked at the burning ruins of the Whisper unit ship. "They won't be coming back soon," he said. But deep inside, he knew the people who made her would never stop. And now they would fear her. Days passed since Iron Ridge burned. The sky above the moon had gone quiet again. No more black ships. No more hunters. Just wind, silence, and the sound of old metal creaking in the cold. Jackson stood outside the ship, repairing a busted panel. His hands were scratched, tired but steady. He had been through worse, but never with someone like Sheena by his side. Inside the ship she was resting, healing, or maybe evolving. Xina no longer had glowing scars or shaking hands. Now, her eyes stayed bright even when she was calm. Her voice was stronger, her steps more certain. Whatever they tried to build in her didn't break her. It made her, but not how they wanted. One morning, Jackson found her standing near the fire pit. The one where they had burned the coat. In her hands, she held something new. A coat. It wasn't the same one, of course. That one was ash. This one was made from parts of old uniforms, stitched together with care. It was heavier, fitted to her small frame. But familiar. "Where'd you get that?" Jackson asked, smiling. Xina turned serious but calm. "I made it," she said. "Not because I needed it." She looked down at it, brushing her fingers over the seams. "But because I remember how it felt when someone gave it to me." They sat together on the ridge, overlooking the wasteland. Jackson handed her a small metal chip, the last piece of the Whisper unit core, broken, useless now. She turned it in her hands, then dropped it into the dust. "I don't think they'll stop," she said. "No," Jackson agreed. "But now they know what happens when they try." She nodded. "I used to be afraid of them, afraid of what I was, but now I know." She looked him in the eyes. "I'm not their weapon. I'm not their subject." She stood slowly, wind brushing through her hair. "I'm something they can't control anymore." They left the moon 2 days later. No destination, just forward, somewhere in deep space. Beyond war and experiments, beyond titles and commands, there's a place they hadn't ruined yet. A place where Sheena could be free. A place where Jackson didn't have to carry the past like a tracker in his pocket. And in every port they passed, people noticed the small alien girl with glowing eyes. And the coat that didn't quite fit. She didn't wear it for warmth. She wore it as a memory of the first moment someone treated her like a person. Not a project, not a weapon, just someone who mattered.